Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Severance. This, of course, is Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2 review. Hopefully I'm going to try to, as much as possible, keep the episodes good and flowing as far as just recalling what it was that I was to see. But there might have been something that I would go on and probably say that might have been in Episode 2, or in Episode 1 and vice versa. So go on and watch both these episodes and then come on and go into spoilers if you like. So, because I honestly, thumbs up, really enjoyed Severance. Currently, right now, this show is on Apple TV, and I'll go out of my way to conveniently say certain apps you can go and be able to watch this for free without it being on Apple TV. So with that said, you can go on and Google search these two apps, letter C movies, so that's a letter, and then that's a word, and then app. Dare in fact, Google search this and be able to say that you can see whatever you like. Brand new releases, exclusive items that are on exclusive apps. You can also go on and Google search an app called Fox HD Movies. You'll have a logo that'll say so, but a title that'll say something different. We play 1080p HD movies. But if you go on and you search Fox HD Movies, you should probably be able to find that app. You can also go into a Google Play Store search for a number of words called TV Crush. And then you'll find an app that has this HD movies with a crown onto the side. You'll be able to download that app and dare in fact be able to kind of see a cluster of things. May not be Severance, but you'll be able to see a lot of stuff for absolutely free. So, for this show, what is it all about? Allie, what is it all about? So, Severance is to be about a show where it seems that people are deciding to separate their work life from their home life. And so these people are to go into this procedure to get this thing injected into the back of their brain to separate the two, because it seems we have it, of course, where some people are working on confidential things that they can't know about. So really that's the whole reasoning for this kind of show. Like, it kind of feels like the Ben Affleck movie, like Paycheck, where it seems that Ben Affleck is to lose a huge chunk of memory and is to go on and find out that he is to have made this big lavish machine without him realizing it. So it's kind of the same thing here. So this is kind of like a puzzle piece, kind of a film, a kind of understanding of what's really going on with these people. And so I thought that this movie, or this show, I mean, was really intriguing, and I thoroughly am enjoying it for how early this show is. Even though there's a lot of times where I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like, wait, what? To where I'm thinking it's like, is when Mark is looking at people, is everyone else seeing the same looking person, or are they seeing a version of a person that, of course, they know from the outside, and so they're just going on and just like having them look a certain way via their work life compared to their outside life. Just kind of wondering or wanting to just kind of possibly put those pieces together. So when going into this show, I'm going to kind of tee it up, but there might even kind of be spoilers even kind of teeing this up here. So we have a girl named Hella who is kind of waking up in a room that she doesn't quite understand. That it seems there's a room that has this speaker and is asking her questions. And Helly's like I don't know, like I don't know what's going on. So all of a sudden, when Helly is to comply to these questions and not know the answers to any of them, it seems that Mark is to go on and tell her that she is to have a perfect score, and then he starts to explain to her what's going on and telling her that she needs to go on and consistently work. But here's the goofy thing. So we have Mark at one point who, before he is to go into work, he is to cry. And then he is to kind of wipe his tears, get ready for work, and is to go into this locker, exchange his clothes, because when really looking at it, some people may have a wildly different kind of set of home clothes compared to work clothes. You know how, like, if you would go to McDonald's, like everybody would be wearing those golden arch like clothing where it have like McDonald's logo somewhere on it. This is kind of the same thing, where it extends to this guy having to wear like certain kind of clothes to go on and get ready to do his job. So, and it also seems that there's certain people that are deciding to to walk off the job or decide to go on and no longer do this kind of thing. So we start to see certain people that are to react um, to this whole procedure in a very specific way. And we meet a guy named Petey right in the early stages here that is to try and help a person understand who he really is. And so it kind of makes for an interesting show. But we're trying to figure out what the real like differences is between the work part of Mark and the outside part of Mark, because it seems like the outside part of Mark and the work part of Mark, it's like, okay, there's some weird dialogue going on here. There's some bizarre things going on with these characters. And do we all have to kind of make that conclusion is just because of who these people are to be now that they have this severance or severed um, brain? Is that now how like things are weirdly coming off as these people being very weird? So it seems like everybody within this town is to all have this kind of severed brain thing going on here. So, and that's what this show means. It's to have somebody deciding to put this uh, this installed thing into their brain to block their work life from their home life. So it's like separation. They should have just called it separation rather than severance, but it makes a lot of sense. So just I guess call it severance because, anyways. So with that said, I'm going to go on and try my best to try to explain these two episodes. So with that said, let's just go into that double five bad boy, because it's about that time to go on into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about the time we do spoil this episode. So, like I said in the very beginning of this episode, we have Helly that is laying on this desk, waking up to, of course, be uh, like not understanding what all is going on. And so Mark is on this intercom and he keeps asking, "Who are you? Who are you?" And Helly's like, "Huh?" So Mark is like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't realize that I should have I should have done the intro." So Mark all of a sudden is to mention that he needs to ask Helly 5 questions, and I don't think I remember all 5 of them, but I'm gonna just try to like tell you what all I remember. So we also are so like Helly at some points is trying to break through this door, trying to like get out of here because she thinks she's kidnapped or she's drugged or she's something and she doesn't have any memory. So Mark now goes on and is to ask Helly these questions because Helly eventually gives in and is to just be like, okay, fine, like I'll answer your questions. And but she's also like, well, what do I get when I answer these? And Mark's like, well, you'll find out. So Mark asks Helly these questions, and one of them, of course, is like, well, uh, who are you? And she's like, well, I don't know. And Mark's like, unknown. Okay, like that's an answer. Like that's like let's keep going. So Helly's asked, what state are you in? He's like, I don't know. Mark's like, okay, unknown. Name a state. Name a place. And Helly's just like, Delaware? Like, well, that's an answer. Um, and I think there might have been like where are you? Like where, like like what place is this? Like I think that might have been a question too, but I'm not quite sure. Let me know in the comments below what was the other question. Um, and the other question was uh, the color of Hella's mother's eyes. What color were they? And Helly's like, I don't know. So Mark is to open this door and it's to tell Helly, it's like, well, that's a perfect score. You don't know anything. Great. So Mark is to go on and explain to Helly, and Helly is asked numerous times to just try to get out of here. And we come to find out that if you ask 3 times to get out of the room that she's in, she can get out of there. But she has to ask 3 times. So now we go from the Mark perspective of things. So Mark is going into work and he starts crying. Weirdly. Then he stops crying and gets ready to go to work and is to go on and have these kind of this tag to go into work, and he has to go on and be uh like go on and get this like a kind of check on him, and he has to like be scanned and all these things. He has to go through these metal detectors and all this stuff. So Mark then goes on and is to be going into his work to go into his locker to change his shoes, and is to kind of grab a different badge. He's to grab a different watch. He's to grab a different number of items to go on to get ready for work. So Mark then goes in and is to talk to some of his cubicle workers, and they're mentioning that it seems that Mark is to get this promotion because one of the other guys that they used to work with just upped and quit. So Mark is going to get a promotion because of that. So Mark goes to his boss, who I believe is Harmony Coble, and so Mark is talking to his superior, and they have Mark. When Mark is starting to ask questions about his kind of last previous workers, really they try to like skirt around that, and they're just like, well, hey, like all you kind of have to be focused about right now is your new promotion and that you're going to train somebody in today. Like that's all that you really have to be focused on. And so Mark is just like, well, okay, because I guess at previous points it seems like other workers were deciding to like send them videos saying that they were like quitting, or like they would give notice or something like that. Like now, like this just kind of happens out of nowhere. So Mark goes on and he is going to train somebody in, and that of course is Helly, to be trained in on this whole procedure of her getting used to working here. So Mark is to be trained in by a guy named Irving to do this process, which there really isn't much for Irving to really tell Mark here, besides just kind of pointing certain things out. So Mark is in this room with this notebook and this kind of microphone, and Helly is in the very next room with the door with this door locked. So Helly wakes up, she starts banging against this door, and so Mark and Irving are like, "Oh my god, I've never seen somebody do this before. This is crazy." So Mark is looking through this book and he's just asking, "Who are you? Who are you?" But then he thumbs through the book, realizing that he has to go on and start somewhere. So he asks the girl the 5 questions, and so we have one point where Mark is to get injured during work and he gets this band aid over his forehead. And then, weirdly, when he leaves for work, he ends up getting this gift card and this uh, like note mentioning how like they realized that Mark had gotten hurt during work. Here's this gift card for this place called Pipson Bar and Grill. And so Mark is like, okay, this is weird. So Mark goes on and he is talking to Helly. And as Mark is talking to Helly, Mark is like telling her like his first experience from being here, on how like he was to mention that he was to threaten whoever it was that was talking to him, that he would find him and kill this person. And Helly's like, well, did you? And Mark is like, well, of course not, because like I didn't know what was going on. So Helly all of a sudden decides, it's like, well, how about I get out of here? Like, is there a way out of here? And so since Mark realizes that Hella has only said this twice, and so he's like, hey, just say it again that you want to get out of here, and then I'll let you out of here. So Helly's like, okay, get me out of here. So Mark goes on and is to usher this girl out to this exit door that leads nowhere. And so Mark can't go on because he's not allowed to watch this girl leave. So Helly goes through this door and is to see this stairway. She's like, oh, okay, like I can get out of here. So Helly starts walking and she realizes that she's right back where she was. She was right back at this doorway to exit. She's like, oh my god, like what's going on here? So this just starts to become her orientation, and we have a guy named Milchik who is to have Helly just consistently trying to go through this door until she learns, until she learns there's no way out. So Helly, like we have Milchik who's like, well, yeah, how about this time around? Like this take, you go on and you're really like you're upset at the door. You really wanted to literally bust through it. Go on, do it. Go on, go on. So Helly keeps trying to do all these different kinds of strategies and kind of like tries all these different kind of things to try to get through this door. And so she just kind of has to realize that this is all just rendered moot here. This is a waste. So but that kind of happens in the second episode. So Mark is to go on and is to make his way home, where he of course is to talk to his sister. And his sister, of course, Devin, because I was trying to double check to see here, like, if this person is who it is, because different hair in the picture. So Devin is talking with Mark, and so Devin is to have some kind of party for Mark because he's been promoted. And so they go on to this party, and these guys are all talking about these very odd things. They're talking about like World War One. They're having all these weird and odd like conversations, and so all after this whole party is done, after Mark has kind of partied and drinked and all kinds of things, so he then goes and is to realize that he may be far too drunk, and so he decides that, like, well, hey, since I'm here anyways at Devin's place, I might as well just kind of sleep in one of Devin's beds. So it seems that Mark is to sleep in this kind of race car bed because I guess they were to get a number of beds for this kid, and Mark is asking Devin and Rickon, who is, of course, Devin's husband. It's like, well, why did you guys go on and get so many beds? And so they say it's like, well, we don't want to cause any kind of trauma by having a kid having to consistently be adjusted to having a number of different beds over time. So instead, we wanted to go on and have all these beds all in this room already. So like the kid could get much easier to the change of when they have to like eventually grow up in different beds. And so Mark is like, okay. So Rickon is all of a sudden touching Mark's foot and like saying some nice supportive things to him, and then he leaves, and Mark is just like, oh, killy dokily. So Mark in the middle of the night is to go on and kind of look around in the house, all of a sudden seeing some guy out in this backyard. So Mark is like, what the heck was that? All of a sudden the guy is to vanish. And so Mark is like, okay, did I see that? Did I not see it? Was I, like, am I just tired? So the next morning, Mark is talking to Devin, and Devin is telling Mark, it's like, well, do you think that you really saw that, or do you think you imagined it? And Mark is like, well, maybe it's just the trauma of me as a kid having to go through so many different beds when I was younger. And Devin is like, how long have you been sitting on that joke? And Mark is like, So we have Mark later on in the episode, or we have him kind of going on in the episode, and he is to go to this Pip's Bar and Grill. He's to meet a guy there named Pete, or Petey. So Petey is to talk to Mark, and is to tell him that he may not exactly know what's really going on. Because Petey, of course, was to take out his own implant, and so Petey is telling Mark, it's like, well, hey, like, if you want to know what's really going on, like, read this card and go to this address. Because Petey is to tell Mark that Mark even sounds different than he really does, and that there's certain people that they both hated, and stuff like that, just kind of like saying how like Mark is Petey's best friend, and Petey is Mark's, or no, wait. Petey is Mark's best friend, but Mark to Petey is just one of his friends. So that was of course very confusing to try to just to splue that out. So Petey is kind of very cryptic here, kind of telling Mark of a real life that he of course is to actually have, and just like, hey guy, if you want some answers. So Mark all of a sudden is to decide to read this card, and so the card goes on and is to like mention that like you're a great niece or something like that, and so Mark goes and flips the card, and so this is like Casey Kasem, NPD writes. P is to mention that the card was just some rush job that he just kind of grabbed for something to write on. And so I'm sure in the real world of things, that I'm sure Mark would really be a really good niece. But so PD goes on and is to mention that um, like Mark really needs to get the right answers and all of this stuff, like mentioning about how they're really good friends, and like Petey is really trying to go out of his way to like tell Mark, like trying to convince him here, and then there's this address at the back of the card if he wants answers to go to this location. So Mark is just like, like I don't know, like this just seems kind of weird. So so we go on here, and so like, and I'm gonna get a little all over the place, and I apologize. So we have Mark that goes to, I guess, work, and Mark is seeing this picture that everyone has on this cubicle, and it is of course to be like one guy that no longer works there, and Mark has decided to take all of these pictures down around his cubicle place, and also in episode one we had Mark who was to kind of walk Helly through the business and say, I guess, that they were like expanding or going to expand, and then in the future they're probably going to see a lot more people working there. But there's this whole section that's just kind of like a bunch of people that aren't really there. So we have Mark who takes these photos and puts them in this storage room, and these guys are starting to work. These guys are starting to work here. So Helly, after she goes on and gets her orientation, is to be set down by this cubicle to find out what she's supposed to do. So Helly is going on and looking at this computer screen, and so they tell her, it's like, well, hey, like, you have to go through here and search for any numbers that look scary, that look weird, that are to really be sticking out. And for the ones that are on the computer screen, kind of pluck at all of them and are to, like, scroll down and put them in this bin and be done with them. So Helly, of course, asked Dylan, it's like, what do we really do here? Like, what are we really doing? Because for these jobs, everybody is to go on and be like Ben Affleck from Paycheck, where they don't really know what's really and truly going on. It's all confidential. So they just kind of have this conspiracy theory. And so Dylan is saying that supposedly they might be going on and be trying to have a world that is like post-apocalyptic, that like there's just this desert world and they have to go on and protect the water and try to siphon a bunch of stuff out of the water that could lead to danger. And so maybe that's what they're doing. But there's another suspicion that possibly they're just editing movies to like censor them for, I guess, TV or something like that, or just kind of doing something else. So we go on here and we have in the episode where Mark is to go on and have this like kind of this seminar with this group. And so Milchick is tossing this ball around with these guys, and they all have to just kind of say something. And like say something about themselves that they know about themselves, about the real selves. And Helly's like, well, I don't know anything about me, so toss the ball. And so Milchick is like, well, since Helly doesn't know anything about herself, then Milchick is to go on and say some things about Helly. And Helly's like, okay, whatever that means. Like, so we have Mark that is to go on and get the ball. And we even have one point, I think, where someone is to say that he feels that this place is kind of like a family already. Now that certain people are in place, and we have like Irving that's like, aw. So we go on in here, and we have Mark that gets the ball, and he was to say something that he has technically said when they have done this before, and Milchick catches him on that, and he's like, oh, crap. So Mark is just like, well, like, I'll come clean. That I decided that I wanted to take all these frames and all these pictures from these cubicles and put them in the storage room. Because every time I looked at them, they just kind of made me sad. And Irving is like, well, yeah, I kind of called Mark out on that. And Milchick is like, okay, all right. So we go on, and so Hella is to start to do her job, and she's kind of like, well, you know what, like, what if I don't exactly like doing this job? What if I want to go on and transfer and do something else? Because I don't really understand what we're doing. This feels just kind of like a waste. And they're like, well, you can't. Like, you're just stuck doing this job. So Helly's like, well, no. Like, what if I just go on and give myself from the outside, like, a note? Because we really have to go on, and it gets really confusing when they keep saying about this, like the inner and the outsider, or the inner and the outer, like of who they actually are and whatever. And so also we kind of had this one kind of confusing moment where after Mark was to go on and make it to this parking lot where he kind of bumps into this girl who looks like Hella because it looks like her. And we also had Mark who was to have this consistent problem with her neighbor, who she keeps going on and putting both of the garbage bins out when she should only be bringing out one. And every single time Mark is to call this woman upset just because it's like, okay, every single night you go on and keep putting both of these garbage bins out and you only need to put one out. And every single time that you do, I can't put my garbage out because I just can't. So every single time that Mark is to talk to this girl and still continue to keep telling her this, she keeps on doing the exact same thing. To where now it seems that Mark can't put his garbage out. He just can't. So, because immediately every time I think they end up just taking the one garbage. And so, like, you would think that this guy would just chuck this girl's thing in her own yard and just be done with it because he's just so fed up at this point. So, we have Mark who's talking to this neighbor, and we find out this neighbor looks just like Harmony Cobell. So it seems like every time we're on the outside looking in, it seems that these people are to look differently for certain specific people, oddly enough. So, back to the whole Helly wanting to quit thing, where it seems like she's kind of already fed up with this job. It seems like she wants to quit. And so she wants to give her other self the note to say, I want to quit this job. And Mark is telling Helly, well, you can't go on and give your own self a note. It doesn't work that way. So Helly goes on and tries to leave the place. And all of a sudden, alarms go off. And all of a sudden, this security guy named Mr. Grainer comes in and is talking to Helly. And is like telling her, it's like, well, hey, you can't go on and have certain like written items come out of this building. It just doesn't work that way. So Mark is all of a sudden coming in and saying, it's all, oh, I'm sorry, sir, like I was the one who forgot to tell Helly about this whole procedure, and really I'm to blame, it's my fault. And so Mr. Grainer is telling Mark, it's like, well, like I think it's time for you to come with me, Mark. And so Mark goes on to go with Mr. Grainer, and all of a sudden Mark is to have this door opened, and it looks like he is with Harmony Cobell, and all of a sudden this scene just stops, and we just see another thing going on. So we see Mark, who's going on a date with this girl, that it's obviously not working out. Just, it's really not. So every time that Mark is talking to this girl and really trying to get to know her, um, like everything like he's saying and she's saying, it's just like nothing's really clicking, nothing's really coming together. So, but it also seems that the only reason why Mark is to really go on and date this girl is because because Mark's sister recommended them going out. So it just kind of feels forced. And so really it's just like I don't think I was ever going to really be interested in this girl anyways. So Mark and this girl are going off to see these two people who are having these flyers trying to tell people to not go on and do this severance like procedure. And so Mark is to try to defend this and is talking to these people and telling them like, well, like how is it that you know anything about this whole procedure? Like how old are you? Like 12? Like you're not even old enough to go to high school. Like what do you know about anything? And plus also why are you even like insulting me with the language that you're like insulting me with? Because you're not old enough. And so we have Mark, and so these guys are saying that it's a possibility that like you could like that two of you could go to two different heavens and hells, and like they're going on and just kind of like saying that there's a bunch of like issues, that it isn't safe and all of this and that. And so Mark is like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like I don't know what I'm talking about half the time for this review, so it's okay. At the end of the day, it is what it is. So let me know in the comments below if there's something that I forgot about, because I'm sure that there probably is. Probably a million bajillion things. Hence why you go on and review 2 episodes at a time. Works out great, right? No, I think everything is going fine. I think everything is great. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Moving on. So, as I talk to myself consistently, moving on. He's weird. So, we go on, and so already, like, we could tell that this date is just going to go nowhere, that Mark is not going to get with this girl. As we kind of had the girl who was, like, telling Mark, like, oh, yeah, you work with the Loomis company? Like, of course you do, because everyone else does. And And Mark is just like, well, yeah, like everybody in this whole state, like basically goes and does this whole procedure. It's like everybody does it. So it seems like Mark is not really going to have much to really talk about because like when really looking at it, I think a lot of people want to go on and talk about their job or talk about the work and how they don't like it or how they have to just gripe about it. But it honestly seems that now that these people don't have their job to probably talk about it, doesn't really seem like they have much to talk about. And what they do talk about is just kind of like, huh? So, and it's obviously through these parties or through these dates and stuff like that where we kind of really see that. So, Mark, after going on to this date and is to make his way home alone because I guess he didn't get laid, Mark is to just see this flare again. And so he's deciding the next morning to call off sick. And so all of a sudden, the real Mr. Grainer and Harmony and the superiors are all just saying, like, well, doesn't it seem kind of coincidence that this guy is to go on and call in sick today? Yeah, it seems really weird. So we have it, of course, where Irving is weirdly just doing his job as if everything is just kind of normal. But then all of a sudden we have Irving who is starting to thumb through all these numbers, and things are starting to get weird. Irving all of a sudden is to see that there seems that Irving is just kind of um, like kind of dazing off or dozing off or kind of zoning out. And Irving all of a sudden is to see all this black goop that is appearing all over his cubicle. Irving starts freaking out. He's like, "What is this?" And so all of a sudden, we have Milchick that just appears and is to kind of pull Irving out and is to put him uh, in uh, this room. And so I guess he's gonna get docked pay for him just kind of dozing off. And so Irving is to be forced to go into this room where Irving is to hear a number of things about who his real like other person is. That evidently this woman is to rattle off all these things about this guy, and Irving can't talk. He can't reply in any way because Irving is to like to go ah or just like ooh or yeah like. And so the girl's like, I'm going to deduct 10 points from you every single time that you go on, you interrupt me, or whatever. Like, so you're going to continue to hear these and don't do a thing. So, this woman is to mention that the real life Irving is strong, that, like, he helps people, and that he's generous, and, like, all of this stuff that it's like, how would Irving even know if this is really true about his other self? Like, they could just be making this crap up. And that's what I'm kind of thinking, that, like, any number of these people at any second just make this garbage up. How would this person even know? They wouldn't. So they can just make up this stuff because it doesn't really matter. So, Mark is going through the ringer of that. Or Irving is going through the ringer of that. So, Mark goes on and Mark decides that he's going to go off to that address and speak to Petey. So, Mark goes to this place and is to meet with Petey. And Petey is to have this tape recording where I guess someone was to get tortured and was to get broken and then like submit to these people, and Mark is telling Petey, it's like, well, what is this a recording of? And Petey is to mention that this is a recording of a place that they call the break room. To, I guess, literally mean they actually break a person to like force them to do what they want. So like Mark doesn't even realize like the manipulation that kind of goes in here of what they actually do. So Mark, I think at this point is just talking to Petey. He's like, "Yeah, I definitely want to know more. I definitely want to know what the heck is going on." So we also have it where Petey is kind of going through this like this kind of sickness from after he had gone on and taken out this implant. And Mark is like, "Well, I've never heard of this before." And Petey's like, "Well, of course you haven't, because I'm the only person who is to have gone on and had this sickness of taking out my own implant." And so we go on, and we have Petey, who is to make his way to his place. And all of a sudden, we have two different versions of Petey that are to kind of show up in the same room. One Petey is to be one that is kind of getting very sick, and another Petey is to be a guy that's the same Petey in the shower. And we find out that this ends up killing Petey off. That I guess like this just becomes too much, and Petey dies. But then only one Petey is just kind of come back and die in what I guess is to eventually be the real like version of Petey. Who I guess the outside work Petey is to actually be the real legitimate Petey. And so like because of what the one Petey did to take out this implant, it just killed both of them. Technically, but it killed the real legit Petey. Anyways. So with that said, that's kind of how episode 2 technically ends. Let me know in the comments below if there's something that I misplaced or forgot about, because there might have been some important piece that I probably did forget about, because there's a lot of information to talk about within 2 episodes. But it seemed maybe easy enough to just try to like squeak out just talking about both of these. So let me know in the comments below if there's something that I did forget about. There's a lot of dialogue of stuff where I didn't go on and talk about and whatever. Oh, we also had the one scene where Irving was talking to this one guy while he's waiting to be put in the room where he is to be told all these great things about his other person. And so he's talking to a guy named Bert. And so Bert is Christopher Walken here. So Irving is to mention that there seems to be a plethora of different kind of motivational posters and paintings and stuff like that. And evidently Irving is to love those, and Bert's like, "Oh, well, I was the one who did all of those." And Irving's like, "Really?" And Bert's like, "Yeah, like it's great that somebody's to say to me that they like those, because um, Bert is also to go on and do like these other kind of things for this job." And Irving's like, "Oh, I love those too." And Bert is like, "Oh, really? Well, we're gonna update those and gonna change them and change how they look, and that's coming out soon." Irving's like, "Oh, great, I'll look out for those." And Bert's like, "Okay, great." So it's a one goofy random thing, but I like. But maybe Christopher Walken's character will be more important in the future. So like eventually, I guess I'll go on and I'll see how he eventually gets inserted or involved in this show more. But I think it was just kind of cool seeing Christopher Walken on the show. So with that said, I think I've covered most of this show. Let me know in the comments below if there's something important, vital, or whichever. I didn't go into details because really, to compound all this stuff, plus also realizing how much stuff I usually have to review. I'm just going to go through and try to just do this best I can, because at the end of the day, go out of your way to watch somebody else who is to watch the show, and they will probably be in heavily detail and know every single in and out and whatever, and that's completely okay, because at the end of the day, spladoosh, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, buddy. Bye, buddy.